Hey guys, today is an awesome day because I get to finally tell you about Oathsworn Into the Deepwood by Shadowborn Games. In fact, I have an exclusive reveal that I'm very excited about sharing, so stay tuned for that. I've also actually helped playtest the game and will be giving you some general information about the game along with my opinion of it at the end. Alright, let's get to it. As always, I wanted to let you all know that these videos are done thanks to my wonderful patrons. I publish many of my videos early there for them to see, write involved updates about gaming and painting and running this channel, hold votes, give out painted miniatures, and more. If you'd like to help support the channel in that way, the link is in the description below. Now, on to Oathsworn. Oathsworn is an insanely ambitious project. It is set in a world consumed by the Deepwood. People now live in quarantined cities that are constantly besieged by the monsters that live in the wood. It is a dark and gritty place full of violence and crime. You play as an Oathsworn and are one of the few people willing to go into the Deepwood to combat these monsters. At its core, Oathsworn is an incredibly deep story and narrative that you get to choose the path of. Borrowing from legacy games, you will make important decisions that will fundamentally change your story from the people in your party to the places you visit to the rules you play by. With that in mind, each play session is made up of two things, the story and the encounter, both with their own set of rules and mechanics. In the first part, the story, you will be navigating beautiful maps handmade by the award-winning cartographer Francesca Barald, following plot lines, interacting with NPCs, reacting to events, making decisions and skill checks along the way. The entirety of the story will be fully voice acted by Game of Thrones actor James Cosmo. Eventually, the story will lead you to an encounter. You might spend days in game time within the city following the story, but an encounter only lasts a few moments within the game's world. That being said, this will be roughly half or more of your playtime. You'll be controlling 45 to 50mm heroes fighting upwards of 100+mm miniature bosses. Each hero has their own set of special moves and equipment that they will be using in a new system called Battle Flow, where the cards used have a refresh cycle before they can be used again. Many of your moves can be used offensively or defensively and can be comboed together, so hand management and board position are key. Each miniature gets custom dynamic bases, meaning some wonderfully positioned sculpts, and will be push fit. The size, realistic proportions, and overall detail of the miniatures are specifically done with painters in mind. Okay, so that's Oathsworn Into the Deepwood at a very high level, but what about my thoughts on it? Well, first I just gotta say that I really enjoyed every play session I got with this game, to the point where I wish I had had more. I kept actually bugging them like, hey, I'm willing to play again if you are, sort of, to help them and give feedback and stuff like that, but also because I wanted to play the darn game. It's really, really good. It doesn't help that the people who made this, or at least Jamie specifically, has a wonderful accent, and so it's just kind of like the whole James Cosmo thing, where it's just nice to hear it in that kind of nice accent. It speaks a lot better than me, but that's a low bar, I suppose. Anyway, the miniatures look really, really good. I mean, the sculpt design is awesome. The attention to detail on all of them, the how they're putting it together so that the seams will make sense. So I actually have some pictures where you can kind of see how that works. And that's really, really good because, a lot of times, even if the detail is good, if the seams are just right down the middle of their face or something like that, it doesn't quite look as good, right? You're going to have to clean that up and you're going to lose detail, especially when it gets near that. And so they're designing this very, very intelligently when it comes to, making these beautiful miniatures and having that table presence and the painting hobby itself. So that's exciting. Gameplay-wise, it's really, really good. So the story is enthralling. It's really dark and gritty and lived in, and I like you can, between the art and how everything's described, you can just imagine it, and it just rained and everything's all moist and muddy and all that kind of stuff. The world has all these different factions, so you got these people, these Oathsworn and stuff like that. And it typically, if you go out and about in the Deepwood, you live about 60 seconds. And so, it's bad out there. It's kind of like an Attack on Titan kind of thing, if you know what that is, where the people are living in cities and afraid to go out. But, it's really, really good. And the kind of choose your own adventure kind of mentality of it, where, you know, it's like, okay, you arrive at the city, and then even before you enter the city, you get to make decisions. And there's multiple cities, obviously, but in the one that I played, you know, I got to make decisions on how I entered it and whether I interacted with people or not. And those people are in the world. They don't just necessarily leave because you said, no, don't join my party. They might still be there. And in fact, there might also still be chances for them to join your party, stuff like that. And you're having to do like these investigations and, you know, talking to people and making decisions. And sometimes a big like action scene will happen within the story. So you're having to do skill checks. Like first you have to kind of decide, like, it's very D&D like, right? You have to decide like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, reach for that person before they, you know, run away or whatever. And then you have to actually see, okay, did you do that? But you can choose to do that. You might not. You might just let them go, or, you know, it just, there's a lot of decisions there, and it affects the story. It follows really well. It's kind of like the Seventh Continent Fallout, Tainted Grail style, the things that they do on cards, where it's like, if you picked this, turn to this page. Right? Or you know, or kind of like a choose your own adventure style. Obviously with the app and the narration that they're going to be doing, that'll be really, really smooth. You'll pick what you did. You'll pick if you were successful or not, and then it'll kind of go from there. There are things where the whole party has to check a skill. There are parts where just you have to check a skill. It's very, very cool. Meanwhile, there's this whole time tracking mechanism. So below that, there's like, hey, here's the day, you know, with night and day, and then different events can happen depending on the day. And there's different tracks for whatever mission you're doing. So each one's a little bit more unique. That way it's not just the same thing over and over again. And then there's also, like, at least the one I played, there was even like a time limit. Like, I only had this certain amount of time to do something because stuff was happening. And then you either can or you can't. And so you're choosing where you go and who you talk to and all that. And all that is great and awesome. And that's just not like half this game. The other half is a whole encounter thing. So I kind of view it kind of like a Kingdom Death Monster scenario, where you have that village system in Kingdom Death Monster where you're, you know, kind of upgrading your village and doing all that kind of stuff. And that's almost a whole separate game. And then you go out on the hunt. And that's kind of what this is too. So you have that whole kind of very deep D&D experience kind of thing. And then, or, you know, just very RPG-like. And then you go and you actually get the encounter. And the encounters are awesome. They're amazing. It's really fun gameplay, and it's very thematic. And so I'll tell you about the Broodmother, because I know they've already talked about that. The Broodmother is 120 millimeters high. It's about the size of a real rat, actually. And she's got like all these baby rats on her or whatever, and they can come off of her and attack you. So you can have the adds to the boss. So I think each encounter does involve a boss, and they all act differently. I'm not going to tell you about the other ones that I've seen, but suffice it to say, their game mechanics are unique to them and they act differently, but they're grounded in this kind of really good game mechanic system and rule set. So, you know, when it comes to picking targets and stuff like that, that's all following the same thing. You have to relearn them every time. They're not adding whole swaths of new rules to each one, but they're all unique and they act in a unique way, which is really cool. So the Broodmother, you know, it's just this huge presence, and you're around there with, like, you know, there's like trees around, you're in the Deepwood or whatever, right? And it's like this hexagon grid-based combat system where, you know, you can move and attack, and there's line of sight and stuff like that. But you can do stuff like okay, so I guess I'll kind of go in order. So you have these cards, and, you know, these cards are your moves and your weapons, right? And so you're like, oh, I'm going to attack with my cudgel, but then maybe I can defend with my shield, or I can do a shield bash. So sometimes you have an offensive and defensive option of the same card. Now, each card will have like a, essentially a refresh cycle, or an amount before you can get it back, right? And so it's like, oh, I could do the shield bash, but then I don't get this card back for 3, you know, rounds or turns or whatever. And so it'll kind of go around your player board. So you kind of have to be conscious of where you're at, where you'll be at in the future, and whether or not you want to use that card now or later. Or maybe I want to keep it for defense, so I don't want to use it for attack yet. So you keep your shield card and you don't play it at all. So you can play as many cards as you want there, and they're kind of doing that whole system. So you could go out with a bang. And I kind of like this kind of push your luck mechanism. It reminds me of like Conan or the Batman Gotham City Chronicles, where you have that gem resource system. Replace the gems with your cards, and that's kind of similar, where you can go, really heavy, but then, it's just going to cycle a little bit back, and maybe you don't get anything back, maybe a little bit. Or you can kind of do it steady or stuff like that. It creates, like in the game that we had, there was this one moment where we were attacking the brood mother, and this guy went all out. He had this barbarian guy with like 2 axes kind of thing, right? And what he can do is he can like leap over people and like attack them and get bonus damage if he attacks them from behind us for that. So he like leaps over the dude and then like attacks him and does like a headbutt and stuff like that, just trying to like murderize the brood mother one last time. Botches it. It was hilarious. but he went out in style, which was the point. And that was kind of nice. But you can do stuff like that. Like you can, depending on your position. So there's a lot of AoE attacks in this game, especially from the AI, so the bosses, so where you're at and how you can interact. There's one person that can kind of jump from tree to tree, and so if she's near trees, she can like jump around and everything like that. Just a lot of really cool positional things like that, where, if you're on that guy, you can jump over him and land on the other side, that sort of thing. Additionally, the position matters because these bosses are huge. They are big, and therefore you can actually attack multiple parts of the boss. You can be attacking the head or the arm or the, back legs or whatever, and so like you can attack these different parts of them. Which affects their attacks. So how what attacks they can do, and also they can counterattack too. And so if you knock off like their the rat's tail, let's say, or whatever, right? It's going to react to that, and so it's going to hit you back, which is really, really kind of cool. And again, kind of that KDM kind of thing, that Kingdom Death Monster sort of thing, where it just makes the battle seem really dynamic and really, it has a good flow to it. Game mechanic wise, they have a really nice system where you'll get certain colored dice, and the different colored dice are better, right? And so, white, yellow, red, black, that sort of stuff. But you can choose how many dice you roll. The problem is that if you get 2 misses, then you've missed, or 2 blanks. And so it's kind of a push your luck thing, right? Where it's like you can roll a lot of dice, and they're exploding dice too, which is great. I love exploding dice. And so, you can roll, 10 dice, let's say, and that's fine, but you have a higher chance of missing. But if you don't, you have a higher chance of doing way more damage. And so you kind of have to judge, how much damage you need to do and how safe you need to play it. They also have a card deck system to simulate dice. If you want, so if you don't like that randomness at all, and you want a kind of more, I don't want to say mellow experience, but where it's more averaged out, you don't have those really swingy highs and lows per se as much, you can actually draw from a deck. I love rolling dice. I'm terrible at it, but I love rolling it. And so I always chose to roll the dice. And in fact, I like rolling lots of dice. So I typically picked like 5, even though it wasn't useful, just because it was more fun for me. And it means I got those swings. I would either do a ton of damage, or I'd, whiff and miss at the last minute. And either way, I find that enjoyable. Maybe my teammates didn't as much, but it was fun. I am who I am. What can I say? So I like that you could pick the cards for people who don't like that, or just pick how many dice you have. It has really good dice mitigation, so if you do miss, you get a token that allows you to reroll, and so you can start rerolling stuff. There are other ways to get little bonuses to the dice, so you can do that, and obviously you can pick how much dice you roll as well. So there's some really good mechanics there when it comes to the fighting back and the the counterattacks and the positions and the cards and the refresh cycle. So you got some hand management there, you got some position there, you got the dice mechanics and that whole thing. It's just, it's really cool. It's a blast. And it's not always easy. So in the first game I played against the Broodmother, actually, I picked the Ursa Warbear. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go in there and attack. And I just like face charged the Broodmother, and she promptly killed me, which was unfortunate. It's not a permanent death like that. I did receive some wounds that I would, maybe have to heal later or have to deal with and stuff like that. But I mean, I quickly learned as a player that you can't just necessarily face charge these enemies. They are nasty and mean, and they're called boss monsters for a reason. I mean, they are nasty, and it fits the theme very much too, that even though I'm like the best of the best, I could still fall at any moment. I mean, it can go south real quick for you. Because yeah, they hurt and they hurt bad. And the AI system works pretty well where it's typically, you know, targeting you and going after you and reacting depending on who's doing what, to the enemy or around it, which is really nice. But it's all card driven AI, by the way, and, very much a, spatial AI. So again, it's very positional based depending on where it's moving and where you are in relation to it or what it is you're doing, which is kind of cool. Now, once you end up, by the way, it was the death of my character or the incapacitation or injury of my character, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what to call it in the game. But I still got to play. And so we had like this like villager Bob that came in with like I think he had a pike or something like that. And he was boss. Like I actually did really well with him. So I'm playing this like, it's essentially an NPC character that, I mean, it was a real character in the story. It wasn't like some random person. But you know, we had access to this guy. And so he came in and played. And so I took control of him. So I wasn't, you know, I didn't have to like essentially leave the table and go make a sandwich or something while everybody else is having fun, which is good. I really liked that. So once you end up defeating the monster, you actually get, resources from it. Like, with the brood mother, I got like a spinal column weapon thing or something like that. It was like some sword made out of, or something crazy like a bone something or other. So you get a few items that you can pick from and, you know, divvy out among yourselves and stuff like that. And so and then there's a leveling up system. So over time you get to, change your cards up a little bit and update your cards, which is really cool. There's a ton. Like when I said that this is an ambitious game, I wasn't joking. This is a huge game. Now, with the size of the miniatures, the amount that it looks like we're going to be getting, the story, the app, all that stuff, I'm not expecting this to be cheap, but I'm expecting it to be good, if that makes sense. So this is not going to be some $60 game, right? I mean, let's get real here. But what you're going to get looks amazing with a huge attention to detail. All the time, I would actually do like a Q&A session with these guys afterwards, after each play session. And more often than not, and I mean like 90% of the time, they had an answer to my question. And the fact that they've already thought of my concern or whatever, right? And so they're really taking the effort. I mean, first of all, the fact that they're doing playtesting is better than some games on Kickstarter, right? But they're really putting the effort to make this right, to make the game fun, enjoyable, to get the feedback, to be open to, you know, both, praises and criticism. So, you know, there were a few things I would mention, like, oh, it'd be nice if it did this or did that. Overall, I was satisfied, even if they had just delivered what it is. But they were taking it like, okay, yeah, you know, either we've already heard that before, or we were thinking about that, or we weren't sure how this would work. And so just an outstanding group of people, really, of professionals, really working on a quality product that looks and sounds exciting. I can't wait to play it again. And so, I can't wait for you guys to like fully see it. I will be definitely talking to these guys at Gen Con, so expect a lot more coverage on them. Ideally, I'll have a whole video around maybe a play session or an interview or maybe both or something like that, where they can kind of walk through the game, probably explain it a bit better than I can, and you can actually see some of this stuff more in the flesh, in air quotes, per se. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. The Kickstarter is coming out in October, is what they're shooting for. So end of year, but a little bit before the kind of dreaded November thing, which is, I think, really smart. So looking for October on the Kickstarter there. There is a link below to their mailing list. That is what they're wanting everybody to go to, because that's how they're going to be releasing a lot of information. You can also see their website, and you can see a lot more. It'll talk about it. It'll show off, you know, some of the people. It's not behind a blocker anymore like it used to be. So you can get more information there. Sign up for the mailing list. I'm going to be doing the same because I want to get those updates as well. That's in the description below. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. As always, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.